Let's talk to Emma Trimble, writer, broadcaster and presenter right here, right now. Emma, very good morning to you.
Good to be with you, Mike.
Nice to see you. This is such a scandal that I think, I don't say I fear because I don't fear it. I think this could bring Starmer down, it could bring Yvette Cooper down, it could bring them all down because what on earth did they know and what on earth did they do about it?
Absolutely, Mike. I mean, I think it's quite clear that the Labour Party did not want to have this inquiry. They're only doing it now because they've been forced. They've been forced by political pressure, public pressure, and now ultimately they've been pushed over the edge by Louise Casey's review. They don't want to do this. I think they know very well that this is going to find all sorts of horrific things have been going on at Labour-run councils. Yeah. But I think ultimately what needs to be done is the entire political class need to take responsibility for this, because while there are individual Conservatives who have tried to do something good for the victims while in government, this has been going on for so long now. I mean, even Maggie Oliver herself, who was the original police whistleblower on this, who's been helping girls through her foundation now for well over a decade, she has pointed out that the stuff that's contained in Louise Casey's report, and I'm not criticising Louise Casey, of course, because I think it's fantastic that she's actually listened to victims and that she's done this and that she's said, actually in some ways, said the same again that she said 10 years ago. Maggie Oliver has been banging this drum, as many others have, exposing the fact, and importantly, that these are also racially, and there is evidence suggesting these are racially and religiously aggravated sex offences. You know, we've known this for a really long time, and this is just it's just a fact that the victims have been reliving the things that have happened to them in an attempt to get justice, to no avail. There haven't been the prosecutions that there should have been. Yes, an inquiry is good, but what we need to see is justice, and justice for those victims whose lives have been completely ruined by, some of these girls have actually got criminal convictions because of stuff that they were prosecuted for, while they were being groomed by these people. So. Yeah. I think that this is something that the entire political class needs to take responsibility for. Unfortunately, I don't think that the Labour Party are going to want to do that.
I think they're going to try their very damnedest to try and avoid being in any way connected to anything that happened in the past. But I mean, we've already got one example. I think it's Sean Davis, who's the MP for Telford. He got up yesterday in Parliament. Just have a look at his question here.
I want to praise and pay tribute to survivors from right across the country, and again highlight the survivors who worked in Telford alongside myself and other organisations to do that local-based review. The reason we did a local-based review was because the then Home Secretary Amber Rudd and the then local government Minister Rishi Sunak refused to provide a statutory inquiry into Telford.
Yeah, which is all very well for Sean Davis to say. Unfortunately for him, though, according to Katie Lamb, he was actually the leader of Telford Council at the time, and he wrote to Amber Rudd, and she's got the letter signed by him in which he asked her not to investigate.
Well, quite. And another horrendous aspect of this is that so many people who are in positions of authority, whether in social services, in the police, in local councils, not only have they not been held to account, and frankly, I think that there should be prosecutions, not only have they not been held to account, but some of them have been promoted. Yeah. And so victims have had to see those who were responsible, because, of course, many of these girls were in care. They were in the care of the state, and it was actually because they were in the care of the state that they were more vulnerable, that social workers just were, they were aware of what was going on to these girls and viewed them as child prostitutes. So people in positions of authority need to be held to account for this, and they need to be prosecuted. Right. I think that, this is something that goes all the way to the top when it comes to the attitude of cover-up. The reality is that the reason for this cover-up is not just political, it's cultural. It goes to the very heart of the dark heart of multiculturalism, which is that they didn't want to deal with these issues because they were concerned about community tensions, and we need to get over that. And hopefully this will be a watershed moment. But I think that, as many of the victims have themselves said, they don't feel particularly optimistic because they've been here before. Right. And it hasn't amounted to much at all.
But I've always said, and I said it several times this morning, I'll say it again, what sort of community doesn't want to have its own ghastly, horrible cruel, vile criminals rooted out and taken away from it. You know, which community would be outraged if police came in to take away men who were raping children out of that community? And how would they see that in some way as an attack on their community? This is the bit I don't get, which nobody really wants to talk about and nobody will explain.
Absolutely, and that's another question of accountability, because who else in these communities knew that this was happening? I mean, this is on such a scale that it was highly unlikely that there wouldn't be people in those communities. You know, what about the wives of these men? Were they aware? Were they not able to?
I think they were.
It has been raised that maybe they couldn't communicate with the authorities because perhaps their English wasn't sufficient. You know, what? Maybe there are community pressures that are preventing people from being able to go to the authorities. And again, this is a problem of integration. So this really is wrapped up in like I say, the dark heart of multiculturalism, which is that in the name of community cohesion and anti-racism and in the avoidance of Islamophobia, we've effectively for well over a decade been throwing our children to the wolves. You pointed out in your previous interview there, Mike, the fact that many of these new cases, as Louise Casey has pointed out, are foreign nationals, people who have come here as asylum seekers. I mean, the scale of this scandal is barely comprehensible. I mean, it is so profoundly evil and such an unbelievable betrayal. And that's why I say the entire political class needs to take responsibility for it.
And what about Keir Starmer? You know, he still hasn't said anything about it. You know, we're monitoring his Twitter account because he talks an awful lot about all sorts of things, including yesterday a tweet about the state of our dodgy roads. But yet nothing on the Casey report, which he commissioned.
Well, I mean, it is really quite remarkable that the ability of this government to turn its face away and stick its head in the sand. You would think that Keir Starmer would at least recognise that this is an optics issue, especially given his current, popularity ratings are really through the floor. Labour struggling in those seats that they took from the Conservatives in the Red Wall in areas where these grooming gangs were operating. You would think at least he would have the political nous, but I wonder whether, if I was being truly cynical, you have to wonder whether it's just that he's trying to save face with his dinner party chums, his international lawyer friends.
Yeah, who all think that, everything British is bad and everything foreign is good. And I mean, see, that he's over at the G7 there, having really no impact whatsoever on anything. Donald Trump's already left the G7 because he wants to sort out the Middle East. And so it leaves the rest of them all sort of standing there holding the baby, wondering, what are we all doing here? Starmer should be surely back here answering questions about this in the House. He should be answering questions about it in a special select committee meeting. And I think we need to know what he knew when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, and why, when he left as Director of Public Prosecutions, the number of convictions and prosecutions of these rape gangs more than doubled.
Well, I mean, the complicity in this from the Labour Party, as well as I just pointed out, the fact that Louise Casey's pointed out that there are foreign nationals involved in the current ongoing grooming gang scandal. And, this is not something in the past. That's one of the arguments that often gets. This is something that happened a decade ago. No, it's ongoing, and that's one of the reasons why it's so important to have this inquiry, to be able to understand what exactly is going on, and to be able to actually have the data so that people in positions of authority can't just fudge the numbers and claim that actually there is no racially or religiously aggravated element to this, which is what they have been doing. They will claim that, as various Labour figures have, that it's a far-right bandwagon, that it's a dog whistle, to point to the specificity of these cases being Pakistani, specifically Muslim perpetrators. I think the fact that the Labour Party, have been repeatedly lobbying and voting for more open border policies. Keir Starmer and his international lawyer chums are the ultimate example of that. That is putting girls and women in this country at risk. So yeah, I think that Keir Starmer, in the most fundamental way possible, I'm sure that he feels like he's sort of being forced to bleed by having to accept this inquiry. But, you know, maybe he's just too busy out there at the G7 picking up Donald Trump's paperwork to actually bother addressing the British public over something that is of such unbelievable national significance and importance.
Yeah, I think just from the audience reaction today, he ought to take some notice. Emma, great to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Emma Trimble, writer, broadcaster and presenter.